So Eric Dungy apparently has some inside sources regarding a guy named Tony Dungy's football future. Eric Dungy says that there will not be an unretirement by Tony Dungy with the Green Bay Packers. I have a feeling that Eric Dungy knows what he's talking about because he's Tony Dungy's son. Tony Dungy joins us now. So we can make it clear for the record now, you will not be the next coach of the Green Bay Packers. Is that safe to say?
That is very safe to say, and Eric does have some good sources. I'm not sure where he gets them, but his sources are very accurate, always.
He calls me.
No, that's probably where he probably gets it from PFT, yeah.
So, this is the time of year, and it's never easy. I know it's part of the profession, but coaches ultimately end up losing their jobs. And we were stunned yesterday when John DeFilippo was fired by Mike Zimmer with 3 games left in the season. And I know you've been there before, the very difficult decision of having to let a coordinator go. Give us an idea of all the different factors that you balance when you're trying to make that very tough decision about whether or not you're going to continue with one of your key assistants.
It is difficult because you put time together, you invest. You obviously believe in the person or you wouldn't have hired them in the first place. And you're selling to your team, hey, we're in this together. This is chemistry. This is camaraderie. It's about more than just business. But then you have to, as Mike Zimmer said, hey, I have to look at the team and what's best in the season. And sometimes you have to make that move. I was on Denny Green's staff. I was an assistant when he changed in the middle of the season from Jack Burns to Brian Billick, and he had his reasons. It was very kind of similar to this. He wanted to run the ball more. He wanted to get Robert Smith in the game, and it just wasn't happening. And so he made the change. He put Brian in charge and said, I've got to get Robert Smith the ball some way, somehow. And it helped us. But it's not always the answer. John Harbaugh did it in their Super Bowl year. Things clicked, and they went to the Super Bowl. So it's a fine line. You're trying to make the decision that's best for the team, but realizing that usually those in-season changes don't produce the results you're looking for.
One of the problems in Minnesota, and Mike Zimmer, I think, has essentially admitted this, he wasn't involved enough on the offensive side of the ball. Why is it, Coach, that we so often see, whether it's Sean McVay in L.A., who got the job because of his offensive prowess. He only focuses on the offense and completely delegates the defense to Wade Phillips. We see Zimmer only focus on the defense, completely delegate the offense to his coordinator. Why does that happen so frequently, that the coach sticks with the side of the ball that got him there and just hands off the other side of the ball to someone else?
Well, you can be successful that way, and many coaches do. And, Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid, Tree, they've gone to Super Bowls and done it that way. And if you are calling the plays, it's almost impossible to be involved on the other side of the ball because that game planning and preparation, whether you're Mike Zimmer on defense or Sean McVay on offense, that takes so much time, and you're in your meeting with your side of the ball so much, you can't be involved in the other side. I took a different approach. Chuck Noll was, who I learned from. He stayed in the middle, and he coached both sides and trusted his coordinators. And that's the way I learned it, and that's what I did. Both ways have been successful, but it is much harder, I think, to manage the whole game, much harder to be involved in clock management, time management, all of those things if you are calling the plays on one side of the ball.
The big criticism of John DeFilippo was that he wasn't running the ball enough. And I looked at the scenario of 3rd and 5 or shorter. The Vikings had passed the ball 87% of the time this year in those scenarios. From a defensive coach's perspective, when you see those numbers and you know that the tendency is very strong to pass in a 3rd and short, what does that do as a practical matter for your ability to coach up your players and have them ready to go out and defend an offense like that?
Oh, you definitely play the percentages, and you play what the team does. And, again, you have to know, as Mike Zimmer, who you're hiring and what you're getting. That Philadelphia tree, that's what it is. Andy Reid, if you look at his numbers, I'm sure when I was coaching against him, 3rd and 1.5 was a pass down. 1.5 or more, they were throwing the ball because that's Andy's philosophy. I've got a good quarterback. If I need 1.5 yards, I'm going to put it in his hands. That's why he's getting paid. And so many of those guys do that. So I don't think that, to me, that's no surprise hearing those numbers, because when you come out of that system, that's what you're geared into. Now, if you're Mike Zimmer and you want to say, hey, I've got Dalvin Cook and I want to run the ball, and if it's 3rd and 2, I want to run some, you better look at who you're hiring, because track record will tell you what you're going to get.
You got your career started as a player with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Your wife is from that area. You've got your finger on the pulse still on what's going on in Pittsburgh. And right now it seems like folks are getting restless with the Steelers. 3 straight losses, an ugly one at Oakland. What do they need to do to get back on track?
I think defensively is where it's got to start. Offensively, we know what the issue is. Hey, you don't have Le'Veon Bell. James Conner ran well for you. Now you're on your 3rd back. So that's going to take a little of the running away. You've got Ben Roethlisberger and all these receivers as weapons. Naturally, you're going to throw the ball more, and they're throwing the ball and scoring enough. But defensively, they went through that stretch in the winning streak where they were playing sound. They weren't giving up big plays. They weren't getting in the gimmick coverages, and they were just playing sound football and holding people down. But the last couple of weeks, you've seen the big plays creep back in, guys running open, miscommunication in the secondary, and I think that's what they've got to solve. If they do that, I think they can get back on track. And they don't need to be great on defense. They just need to be sound, and that offense can carry them.
And the Steelers are facing the Patriots on Sunday. It's a huge game for both teams. And for the Patriots, they're coming off of that stunning loss on the last-second play with the bad decision to have Rob Gronkowski on the field. Bill Belichick tried to downplay the situation. I mean, what's the best way to turn the page on an unexpected loss under weird circumstances where you've got another game that's coming right down the track 7 days away, and you've got to get your players to quit thinking about what went wrong and focusing on what they have to do right?
Yeah, I don't think he's worried about that play necessarily. He realizes, hey, we didn't play that right. If I had to do it over again, I'd have different personnel in the game. That play is going to happen 1 out of a million times. But I think what he's more concerned about is what happened the rest of the game. How did they get those other 27 points? Long runs from scrimmage, 60-yard runs. You saw the lack of speed show up in a couple of areas. There were, I think, 7 lead changes in that game. So Miami was going up and down the field, not just on that last fluke play. And I'm sure that's what he's more concerned about. How can we get our pass rush going again? How can we get that containment and our tackling in the secondary to be better so we don't give up those big plays in the first 3.5 quarters, let alone the last play?
I want to finish where we started, because one of the big questions we raised last week in the aftermath of the firing of Mike McCarthy by the Packers, with 2 jobs now open for 2019, the Packers and the Browns, which job is more attractive? If you were considering coaching next year, which of those 2 jobs to you would be more attractive than the other?
Well, I think if you're going to just come back, or if you're looking for a 2-year shot to try to win a Super Bowl, you go to Green Bay. You've got a quarterback who can make those kind of plays. You've got some experienced people, and maybe have a shot to do something in the playoffs in the next couple of years. If you're looking long-term, Cleveland's got that young talent. They've got a quarterback who is going to be around for a long while and looks like he is the real deal. So if I were a young coach, my first job in 1996, when I went to Tampa, I'd say, let me go to Cleveland and let's build with this. If you're a John Gruden saying, I want to come back and win a Super Bowl as quick as possible, you go to Green Bay and work with Aaron Rodgers.
There are a lot of quarterbacks right now that are the real deal on the right side of 25. And Patrick Mahomes, we've been raving about him all year. I still can't get over what we saw from him on Sunday. There were so many great throws by him that we lose track of some of them. He had that sidearm throw to Spencer Ware down the sideline that doesn't even get discussed. I mean, this guy is doing things that we haven't seen an NFL quarterback do maybe ever, and he's just getting started, Coach.
He is, and one that didn't even look like much, but is harder than people think. The tying score, where it's a free blitzer, you've got to wait for the running back to come underneath. You have to drop it over the blitzer's hand and put it right on the money in stride. It's 4th down. You can't afford to be a little bit off. Perfect touch pass. I am amazed by his arm talent. But even more than that, the poise that he has, the understanding of the game, knowing situations. Hey, it's 4th and 6'9", I've got to run around, and I can throw across my body, and I've got to try it with Tyreek Hill because if we don't get it, we're losing the game anyway. To be able to do that, but then 90% of the time in the other situations to not put your team at risk, to understand what Coach Reed is doing with all these different formations and plays and things that come off it. I think his mental game really doesn't get appreciated for a guy who's only had less than 15 starts.
And that's a great point about the fourth down play that resulted in the touchdown, because you could just sense that he had the kind of calm that you would have calling a second and goal play in the second quarter, that the weight of the moment was not affecting him. He was nonchalant. He was calm. He was poised. He executed the play as it was designed. You check the box. You score the touchdown. You go to overtime.
Yeah, very much so. Hey, I know this guy's free. We have no one blocking him. I have to take my time. I've got to let the running back clear. I've got to let this guy get right in my face so he doesn't pull up and destroy the play. Let him think he's got a sack and then just loft it over his head, and I've got to put the touch on it. It's got to be accurate. Do all those things and not even think twice about it, that it's the game-winning play. And that cool and that calm is amazing for a young quarterback.
Coach, great stuff as always. We'll see you this weekend.
All right, Mike. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
There he is, Hall of Famer Tony Dungy. Great insights as always about what's going on in the National Football League.